The fad is popular with joggers and just about everyone who likes to lose themselves for a while in a kind of escape. Critics say the cassettes are dangerous because noises are blocked out. Important ones like car horns, ambulances, and fire sirens. The people wearing the headsets seem oblivious. Some even wear them to work, saying it makes work more enjoyable, giving them a certain lift. Some employers prohibit such escapism, but that hasn't stopped a lot of people from buying the recorders and headsets. This discount store slashed the price from $110 to $50. The sale began yesterday. Only a few recorders are left.
It used to be just the headphones and radios. Now it's clip it on the belt, so it's pretty much a fad.
Of course, some cities, like Chicago, are thinking about banning these altogether. But in Oklahoma City, it's perfectly legal if you pay attention while you're driving. Bella Shaw, Action 4, paying attention on the Broadway extension.
Take back the night. That was the theme of the rally on Campus Corner tonight. Take it back because women organizers of the demonstration say they cannot now walk the streets safely for fear of rape. They say we live in a rape culture where some men vent their frustrations and anger by abusing women.
Part of the problem is that rape is not, I think, talked about very much. It's one of those kind of taboo subjects that remains hidden. And so one of the problems is that we've had a number of rapes. There have been 22, I think, in Norman to date. And those are the reported ones, so we know that there's much more of a higher incidence on it. So it's needed to make the community aware that this is going on and that women need to be aware of it.
Okay, one more time. What about Take Back the Night, the theme of it?
Take Back the Night is a way for women to talk about the fact that we don't have freedom. We don't have the ability to walk down the streets without fear, that we have to be worried about where we go and what we do. And so Take Back the Night is not only occurring here, but in all countries, all cities throughout the United States. And it's a way for us to say we need to have the freedom that other people have, men in particular.
The purpose of the rally was to raise women's consciousness about rape, make them more aware of it, and hopefully by doing so, maybe prevent future rapes. But significantly, the organizers of the rally advised all women attending it tonight to not walk home alone. Ted Brown, Action 4 in Norman.
Now, you need to get a picture of this here. This is a...
Darrell Anglin is accused of gunning down Big Jim Smith behind Cody's nightclub last August. The state will try to prove that Anglin pumped 2 bullets into Smith during an argument. Smith's body was later found floating in the North Canadian River. The alleged murder weapon was found in the murky waters beneath this bridge. Today, Anglin was arraigned before District Judge William Myers. Oklahoma County prosecutors argued that Anglin's $50,000 bond should be revoked. During an impromptu hearing, Anglin's former neighbor, Oklahoma County Sheriff's Deputy Carson Marshall, testified that his wife was afraid for her safety with Anglin free on bond. Anglin's attorneys argued that their client has been ill ever since being struck by lightning 2 years ago. They said he should remain free on bond so that he can continue regular visits to a doctor. Judge Myers revoked the bond, sending Anglin back to jail. The judge stipulated that Anglin's medication should continue while he's incarcerated and he set a November 16th trial date for Anglin's first-degree murder charge. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the Oklahoma County Courthouse.
Sorry. You gotta be quick. See, that's the heart beating. And you can see some respiratory movements too. You see that?
Yeah.
Moved. That was a good elbow.
Do I?
Yeah,
she
it
did.
sure is.
Looks good.
That's great.
The Lance missile, the main battlefield rocket of the U.S. Army. It's capable of carrying a nuclear warhead and is being modified to carry the neutron bomb. Counterfeit transistors were found in the guidance systems of the Lance. The company that made a key component for the system said they inadvertently used counterfeit parts. There have been several failures of the guidance systems in test firings of the Lance. The atomic weapons system, as important as they are only part of the story of electronic counterfeits. In operating rooms around the country, electronic machines have opened the door to what was impossible just a few years ago. For example, surgeons had stopped this patient's heart so they can replace a valve and repair damaged arteries. Machines play life and death roles.
All the monitoring equipment is essentially electronic equipment. And without that monitoring, we would be flying by the seat of our pants, and it's very dangerous when human lives are concerned.
The equipment is controlled by tiny electronic brains, like this computer chip. If the chip is counterfeit, it just doesn't work. The surgeon could lose the machine they depend on, and that's what happened in the case of this machine, the intra-aortic pump. It's a device that's used only in the most serious cases, when the patient's own heart is too weak to sustain life. In 1978, while they were in use on patients around the country, these machines began failing.
We worked with the manufacturer for a period of what ended up being 11 months with this device, keeping it out of service, never using it as a primary support device for patients.
The maker of the heart pump finally narrowed the search down to the computer chip that controls the pump. Though they bore the name of the reputable company, though they looked identical to good chips, they were indeed counterfeit.
We got that notification. We opened up the back of our machine and verified that, yes, indeed, based upon the description of the counterfeit chips, we had them.
The Food and Drug Administration issued a Class 1 recall of 350 machines. The recall meant the pumps, if used, were a threat to the life of heart patients.
For those patients that are dependent upon assistive-type support with a balloon, the consequence in many cases would be death.
It's a high technology industry where a lot of things can go wrong in the manufacturing process, and they do. In rigorous testing programs, more than half of all computer chips made by legitimate companies are rejected and later destroyed because something about them wasn't quite right. Counterfeits start out on the same production lines, but they're stolen from the factories before they can be tested and before defective chips can be found. So the counterfeiting process begins with a thief.
About 2 years ago, I was involved in a chip theft at Intel Corporation. It amounted to about 3,500 chips worth on the open market of about $400,000. The devices were basically put in false boxes, okay? And these false boxes were just walked right out of the front doors of Intel Corporation.
When this man was caught, he had already sold the chips he took from Intel, but he turned state's evidence and he led police to here. This is the raid where police recovered the stolen chips and arrested electronic supplier Glenn Johnson.
Receiving stolen property? Yes. I have? And could you tell me what I've received that's stolen?
Johnson was later convicted of receiving stolen property. Authorities believe they stopped him just before he turned stolen chips into counterfeits. The process of making counterfeits out of stolen chips is incredibly simple. All you need is a stamp. That's because legitimate companies don't put their names on their computer chips until after they've been tested. And since thieves steal the chips before the testing process, they steal the chips that are blank. All counterfeiters do is stamp a legitimate company's name on the stolen chip. The problem is, at least half the counterfeits don't work. The half that would have been rejected had they made it to testing.
I do believe that there is a potential somewhere down the road that a loss of life could occur because of somebody incorporating defective counterfeit chips into a product.
Anyone who thinks that Southard is understating the case need only to look here, the Space Shuttle program. It happened in the years leading up to last April's historic flight. A ring that was making counterfeit transistors was broken in Los Angeles. As horrified investigators began tracking back through the record of sales, they found that one of the buyers of the counterfeits was a contractor for the U.S. Space Shuttle program.
Ho, ho, yes, I'm the great pretender, pretending that I'm doing well. I seem to be what I'm not, you see.
This week, we've told you about fakes, from heart pumps to helicopters. If somebody makes it, somebody will fake it. The focus has been on counterfeiting, the shadow industry whose reach extends from the blue jeans we wear on the street to the rockets we blast into space. It was just a few weeks ago that the FBI destroyed $1 million load of counterfeit tapes, 8 tracks, the music of Waylon, Willie, and the like. For years, the music industry in Nashville has considered Oklahoma the bootleg capital of the country. Much is being done by law enforcement agencies to shed that image. Many of the tape pirates have moved on down the road. And one item you don't want to duplicate is Uncle Sam's pride and joy, his money. Many try, and most are caught, as in this case last week in Oklahoma. A counterfeiting ring was broken and almost $1 million in bogus bills confiscated. Of course, the penalty for making bogus bills is stiffer than for someone who counterfeits tapes. The record industry would like to change that law. Another scam that doesn't involve counterfeiting, but it does involve fraud, and consumers are being ripped off for millions every year. Consider this. In the automobile parts industry, there are manufacturers who produce replacement parts that have the same serial numbers and look like the real part. They're even packaged to resemble the quality part. Jim Mason at Lakeside Auto Parts tells me the scam begins when an unknowing customer asks for one thing but gets another.
This fuel filter came from the factory with this little valve right in here that is to protect you. If you have an accident or a wreck or something like that, your vehicle turns over, this valve stops the gas from going onto your intake manifold, which would stop a fire. Where if you get this regular gas filter like this, it does not have the valve in there. This is what you want to watch out for when you go into a parts store, is to make sure that you're getting the parts that you need to have on your car to make your car perform the way it came from the factory.
Could that be an item that could possibly be fatal if used?
Yes, sir. If you have an accident, this valve is, if you have a wreck, your car turns over, catches you on fire, this valve will stop this gas from running gas onto your intake manifold.
What are you talking about in price?
Well, like this filter right here, you could probably buy for maybe $2. and this filter right here, maybe 50 cents.
It's not illegal to manufacture these lookalikes. It is illegal to try to pass them off as the real quality part. And it's happening every single day, and you and I are being ripped off to the tune of millions of dollars every year. What can you do to try to keep from being conned? Try and know the person with whom you're doing business. If not, ask a few questions. It could save your life. Jerry Adams, Action 4.
Guardsmen and reservists who fly these C-130s were presented a new medical facility today at Will Rogers World Airport. Service generals from across the state and members of the 137th Tactical Airlift Wing were on hand for the opening of their new, long-awaited hospital. The clinic, which was begun in 1980, will provide general health care services and over 1,500 physicals a year to military personnel. Brigadier General Jack Wright feels the reservists need top medical care.
This facility is very important to the life of the Guardsmen in that we do give physicals, we do some medical care for reservists, Army, Coast Guard, etc. So it touches people and officers and non-coms not in the unit directly.
Over 1,100 reservists train once a month at this Guard facility, and plans are already underway to expand the new hospital. Carol Lambert, Action 4.
Last time I told you 5 of the top grossing films according to Variety. Today I will continue by telling you 5 more. The top 5. This is as of October 21st. Number 5 is Arthur, a smash comedy hit starring Dudley Moore, John Gielgud, and Liza Minnelli. Dudley Moore is Arthur, a rich drunk who has to make a big decision. If he wants to continue getting his money, he must marry a certain girl, more or less picked out for him. The problem is that Arthur is in love with someone else. Moore's performance is great, and John Gielgud is hilarious. Minnelli is just mediocre. Rated PG, Arthur is distributed by Orion Pictures. Number 4 is All the Marbles, a disappointment of a movie starring Peter Falk. He's the selfish manager of 2 female wrestlers played by Vicki Frederick and Lorraine Landon. The storyline is the girls' rise to the big time with Falk leading them. The acting is not that bad, and the girls should get an A for effort. Overall, the movie is weak. The film was rated R and released through United Artists. Number 3 is a wonderful and powerful film, The French Lieutenant's Woman. It's based on John Fowles' 1969 best-selling novel. The movie has 2 parallel love stories, one set in the 19th century and the other is in contemporary times. Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons are simply fantastic. In the 19th century, Streep is Sarah, a quiet seductress jilted by a French lieutenant. She is pursued by an English gentleman by the name of Charles. At the same time, the contemporary story of 2 actors, Anna and Mike, is being told. They are portraying Sarah and Charles. So you've got a movie in a movie. The French Lieutenant's Woman makes for great entertainment, and it's a true pleasure to watch. Number 2 is another great film, True Confessions. It stars 2 of the finest actors around, Robert Duvall and Robert De Niro. They portray brothers, and the movie is about their conflicting loyalties, murder, and corruption. Given the performances of De Niro and Duvall, the film does lack in a couple of areas, and the ending leaves the audience empty. The movie's greatest pleasure, though, is seeing these 2 actors work together.
Ever feel like doing something?
Sure, let's do that. Let's
Maybe Saturday?
Saturday, well, I have my golf game on Saturday.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll cancel if it's the only day you have.
Oh, it's okay. I won't interfere with your golf game.
This might be the film to win Robert Duvall his first Oscar. Number 1 is Rich and Famous, a film starring 2 beautiful women, Jacqueline Bisset and Candace Bergen. They play lifelong friends, but yet compete with each other in many ways. Their friendship and what it goes through is mainly what the movie's about. And it's also to show that Bisset and Bergen are more than just pretty faces. They are also good actresses. Yet, out of all of this, the film still lacks something. It doesn't quite work. So, those are the top 10 grossing films as of October 21st on a week-to-week basis. Next time, I'll be reviewing a movie starring Albert Finney and Susan Day called Looker. I'm Dean O'Lawley. Time Bandits is for the child in all of us. It's a delightful, imaginative fantasy which will take you on a trip through time. It's one of those films which will have you laughing one minute, then transfixed, surprised, but always entertained. The movie starts one night when 11-year-old Kevin, pictured here with Sean Connery, falls to sleep, but is awakened by a knight on horseback, and then by 6 rambunctious dwarfs who look like 2 sets of the Three Stooges. They take Kevin on a trip through the ages. They have in their possession a special map showing the various portholes to different periods of time. When the group makes a stop, they tend to raise havoc and cause trouble, not only for other people, but for themselves as well. Some of the characters they encounter on their time trip are John Cleese as Robin Hood, Peter Vaughn as the Ogre, Kathleen Hellman as Mrs. Ogre, and Sean Connery as King Agamemnon. And talk about good and bad in a film, throughout the movie our group of mischievous midgets are caught between the powers of good and evil. As the supreme being, you've got Sir Ralph Richardson, and as the evil genius, David Warner is simply devilish. The performances are very good, but Kevin gets my favorite vote. Near the end, as you might guess, there is a final encounter between the supreme being and the evil genius.
This way, man, over there.
Sonny? Aha! So, this is the best the Supreme Being can do.
There are a couple of minor flaws in the film. An example of that would be the final battle at the film's end. It seemed to drag on a bit too long. Not everything in the movie completely works, but I do recommend Time Bandits as an entertaining and unique movie. I'm Dean O'Lawley.
The Andrew Johnson Elementary School, with children only 7 years old, sang out patriotic songs inside the Capitol building. As their voices rang out, people were recounting 74 years of statehood. There was even a wedding ceremony as Mr. Cowboy married Miss Indian Territory. Oklahoma is 74 years old and gearing up for its Diamond Jubilee celebration. For the next year, there will be many more ceremonies, complete with a Diamond Jubilee Queen crowned by Governor Nigh today. Outside the Capitol building, the Sill Artillery Band provided the entertainment, and then noted dignitaries took the center stage. The weather was wonderful, prompting Governor Nigh to say, Oklahoma is more than just okay.
In today's vernacular, 1981, I much rather use the emphasis that our youthful chorus used here today. I much rather use the emphasis that the Towers Band used inside and that the spirit is here. I think the vernacular that's used on the athletic field, Oklahoma, it's okay.
After the governor's remarks, the color guard raised the Diamond Jubilee flag, which will fly over the Capitol throughout the Diamond Jubilee year. And there will be something else in the air, the new official state hot air balloon. It costs $23,000, spans 77,000 cubic feet. A man in Bartlesville owns it, and it's part of the Diamond Jubilee project. So it's not so much that Oklahoma turned 74 today. It's on its way to turning 75, and for the next year you'll be seeing this balloon flying across the state as Oklahoma continues one big celebration. Bella Shaw, Action 4 at the state capitol.
After 8 weeks of hard basic work and extensive training on the street, police dogs are ready for the real test. What we're about to show you is a simulation of one of their most common jobs, a building search.
Was 2226.
Patrol officers and K-9 unit members respond immediately when a burglary call is dispatched to the police department. But before entering the building, the handler of the dog calls out a warning for anyone who may be in there.
This is the police. If you're in here, come out now. Otherwise, the police dog will be released.
In this search simulation, Officer Gary Damron releases his partner, 8-year-old Oshin. Damron says the dog instinctively picks up the scent of anyone in the building.
He goes on any airborne scent, which is inside the building or in a field, depending on whatever we're searching. Any scent other than mine, he will pick up on and then in turn go to the strongest point of that scent. You're very aware of what's going on around you, and you really try to watch that dog because he's going to tell you whether or not someone is close enough to really do you any harm.
I give up, officer. Stick your hands out here.
Once you find him, then it's a real relief. You're really high, and as far as I'm concerned, it's about the grandest feeling there is.
Oshin has rounded up 48 felons during his career as a police dog. That track record gives Officer Damron a powerful boost of confidence during those tense moments in an unknown situation. Likewise, the sheer presence of the dog has a staggering psychological effect on the suspect. These canines are expertly trained to display extreme aggression, but at the same time be subject to complete control by their handler. The department has no use for merely a vicious dog. Oshin and dogs like him across the nation have a tough guy's role to play in the prevention of crime, but as Oshin's trainer says, there's no better partner around. Carol Lambert, Action 4.
For the past 18 months, cattlemen have been knocked to their knees financially. Low prices combined with high interest rates have done a lot of them in. But despite hard times, cattlemen still want American consumers to have the best possible product. And according to R.A. Lott's speech, the president of the Oklahoma Cattlemen's Association, that's why they favor the English Amendment.
Well, the English Amendment, Ben, is a amendment changing the rules on the imported beef coming in here, making it any chemical that's been banned here in the United States will meat coming in cannot be treated with that chemical. It's a fair bill. It's not a trade restrictive bill, but yet it makes a pure product for the consumer.
Lott's speech says American beef producers have been forced to discontinue using certain chemicals when feeding cattle. This amendment would make importers play by the same rules. As it stands now, importers are not restricted from using the chemicals. Ben McCain, Action 4.